plan coming from Washington. Let's call it what it is, $20 billion a year over 10 years. That's a drop in the ocean. Where's the investment in rail? Where's the investment in water infrastructure and grid modernization? It's nowhere to be found. And so we need to raise our voices and say rail matters, rail grows the economy, rail is a multiplier, an economic multiplier for all the communities of upstate New York and New York State for that matter. So let's get rail and let's be forceful. Why do I travel on rail? Because it's the energy efficient, most energy efficient form of travel. So it's not just the economy, it's the environment and it's the energy policy that is favorably impacted when we invest in rail. And we need to do that abundantly well. You look to invest in the domestic side of the federal budget, because God knows we spend enough on defense. And when we sought for parity this year, parity meant anything added to either side of the equation will be equal. So it wasn't like the investment in defense and the investment in in domestic discretionary funding was equal. The additives were equal. So we start from that backlash that hurts somewhat. But let's invest in our domestic side of the equation. It's absolutely essential. You know, again, we had $1.5 trillion that we borrowed. That's going to cost us $2.3 trillion to give tax breaks to the corporations and the wealthy. We mortgaged our future, and now we're talking about infrastructure. Now we're talking about it. There better be the dollars for rail. And when it comes to the tunnel, I am told that if any appropriation bill comes forward with dollars for the tunnel, it will be vetoed. We better be ready to override the veto, because that tunnel is essential to the quality of life of the people of this country. I represented the 105th Assembly District and included this town and points west. In 1987, a thruway bridge collapsed, claiming 10 lives, none of which were part of the Assembly District I represented. So when there's a weakness in the system, we're all at risk. We're all at risk. So let's get wise, let's fund that tunnel, and let's stop the foolishness that we will veto any appropriations bill that includes the tunnel funding. That is ridiculous. So we need to go forward and do things appropriately. The infrastructure bill that I just mentioned has its weaknesses, and I shared them with you. But let's look at the budget presentation by the president. $738 million is all that we can afford in that budget. It's a cut that's greater than 50% to what we had in the budget. We need to make certain there's $1.7 billion minimally in the budget for Amtrak. What nation would be so foolish to cut its public transportation? When we look at the billions they're investing in China, when we look at the attempts that President Obama made with high-speed rail, when we fought back the recession and offered the AARA to do things that would help build the rail infrastructure. That lasted for a couple of years, and then there was a switch in Congress, and now we have no high-speed rail initiatives. That is foolishness. So the $738 million has to be pushed aside by $1.7 billion, and we better include the $543 million for the Northeast Corridor, because it's that important. We know the numbers, and we know the public system is required. It provides for an economic boost for our communities. And then we look at investments like one in this town for the train station. That investment is not only about the rail passengers and the rail system, it's about an economic multiplier for this region, enabling people to have the quality of services, the investment in downtown areas, urban cores. That's the order of business millennials are looking for. They want urban core investment. So I'm here this afternoon to share a message of strength, a message of positive thinking, a message of investing in the domestic side of the equation, and making certain that we have our priorities right. Rail matters. Rail is the energy efficient form of travel. It is what business requires. It is what passengers require. Everyday, ordinary citizens require. Let's be real and let's invest in a soundness of a system. We look at the mistakes made. We see restrictive devices that can be retrofitting a system. Why aren't we funding that? Why aren't we putting the dollars forth so that we can avoid injury and death when we know the technology is shelf ready? So there are things we need to do, investments we need to make, and I will continue to do my work from the Energy and Commerce Committee and speak as loudly and forcefully as I can, because this investment matters. If we're going to do a once-in-a-generation infrastructure bill, let's do it right, and let's do it with fervor and passion, and make a difference, and be intellectually wise in our pursuits, and academically sound. There's no excuse for this kind of behavior. And we need real leadership in Washington. And if you can't lead, step aside. Thank you, everybody, for being here.